Welcome to Quick Course Digest. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the foundational thinkers of the Western world with our look at the ancient Greek philosophers. These are the minds that basically set the stage for, well, everything that came after. You know, these are the big ones, right? The questions that keep us up at night. What's this all about? How can I be sure about anything? And what does it even mean to live a good life? Well, the quest to answer them really kicked off over 2,500 years ago in ancient Greece. And to even begin to tackle them, they had to break these huge ideas down. So, first up, you've got metaphysics. Think of this as the ultimate detective story. It's the search for what the universe is really made of. It asks the question, beyond all the stuff we see and touch, what is fundamentally, ultimately real? Then there's epistemology. Okay, so this one's all about knowledge itself. It's not just asking what we know, but how do we know it? How can you be absolutely sure that what you believe is actually true and not just, an opinion you're holding on to? And finally, we get to ethics. And this is where philosophy gets really personal. It brings the focus away from the giant cosmos and right into our daily lives. It's all about asking, how should we act? What actually makes a life a good one? And how in the world do we figure out what's right and what's wrong? All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with that initial quest for wisdom, then see how reason started to replace myth. After that, we'll hit the Socratic turn, compare two massive blueprints for reality, and finally look at how philosophy became a genuine way of life. You see, the word philosophy literally translates to the love of wisdom. And this wasn't just some new class to take. It was a total revolution in how people saw their own place in the universe. And seriously, don't underestimate how radical this idea was. Before this, everything was explained by the whims of the gods. But then you get thinkers like Thales of Miletus. In 585 BC, he actually predicted a solar eclipse. He wasn't praying or reading divine signs. He was using observation and reason. He showed the world that the universe isn't random. It operates on predictable patterns we can actually figure out. So that shift from myth to reason brings us to a group we call the pre-Socratics. These guys were the real pioneers. They're the ones who stopped blaming a grumpy Poseidon for earthquakes and started looking for natural explanations. And they got completely obsessed with one massive question. What is the single basic stuff that makes up everything else? Thales, our eclipse-predicting friend, guessed it was water. Anaximenes argued for air. Empedocles thought it was a mix of four roots: earth, air, fire, and water. And then you have Democritus, who came up with an idea so far ahead of its time it's staggering, that everything is made of tiny, uncuttable particles he called atoms. This all led to the first great philosophical showdown. In one corner, you have Heraclitus. He argued that reality is nothing but constant change. His famous line is, "You cannot step into the same river twice." He thought this constant flow was governed by a universal principle of order he called the logos. But in the other corner, you have Parmenides, who argued the total opposite. He said true reality is a single, unchanging, eternal one, and all the change we think we see is just an illusion of our senses. So while everyone's arguing about the cosmos, this stonemason from Athens named Socrates comes along. And he basically drags philosophy down from the stars and plops it right into the middle of the city streets. This was a massive pivot, the Socratic turn. Socrates just wasn't that interested in what the universe was made of. He was way more concerned with the stuff of our own lives. What is justice? What is true courage? What does it actually mean to live a good life? He shifted the whole game from metaphysics to ethics. And his main tool for doing this was something called the dialectic. Now, this wasn't about debating to prove you're right. The goal was totally different. It was a cooperative conversation. Through intense logical questioning, two people could work together to get closer to the truth, kind of chipping away all the false beliefs along the way. And that method leads us to his most famous saying. For Socrates, a life lived on autopilot, where you never stop to question your own beliefs, your own values, well, that's not a life that's truly being lived. Self-reflection wasn't just a nice little hobby, it was essential to being a full human being. The story goes that the oracle at Delphi said no one was wiser than Socrates. He was totally baffled and set out to prove the oracle wrong. But after questioning all the so-called wise men, the politicians, the poets, the craftsmen, he had a revelation. They all thought they knew things they didn't. His only wisdom, he realized, was that he was totally aware of how much he didn't know. And that profound humility is really the heart of Socratic wisdom. Now, Socrates' constant questioning ultimately got him executed. But his legacy was carried on by his most brilliant student, Plato. And get this, Plato's most brilliant student was Aristotle. These two, they're the heavyweights who went on to create two competing blueprints for understanding pretty much everything. And you can see the huge split right here. Plato basically pointed up. He believed true reality wasn't here in our messy world, but in a higher, perfect, spiritual realm of forms. Think about it like this. You've seen lots of different chairs, right? But what makes them all chairs? Plato would say it's because they all participate in the perfect, unchanging idea or form of a chair, which exists in this higher realm. Aristotle, on the other hand, pointed right down to the ground. For him, reality is the physical world we can see and touch. The way to get knowledge is to get your hands dirty, to go out and carefully observe the world around you. And Aristotle didn't just stop there. He gave us an incredible toolkit for thinking, formal logic. He created this simple, step-by-step method for testing if an argument actually holds water. Let's use the classic example. Premise 1, all humans are mortal. Okay. Premise 2, Socrates is a human, right? Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. So first, you ask, is it valid? Does that conclusion have to follow from the premises? Yes, it does. Then you ask, are the premises true? Yes, they are. And if you get a yes on both, you have what he called a sound argument. It's just rock-solid reasoning. But for so many of these thinkers, especially after Socrates, philosophy wasn't just some abstract game played by academics. It was meant to be a practical guide, a set of tools you could use to navigate the messy business of life and, hopefully, find some well-being. For Aristotle, the whole point of life, the ultimate goal, was to achieve something called eudaimonia. Now, this often gets translated as happiness, but that doesn't really capture it. It's much, much deeper. It means human flourishing. It's that state of fulfillment you get from living a virtuous life and using your capacity for reason to its absolute fullest potential. It's about becoming the best possible version of yourself that you can be. And other schools of thought were also focused on practical living. Take the Stoics. They taught a masterclass in emotional resilience. Their core idea is so simple but so powerful. Figure out the difference between what you can control, like your own thoughts and actions, and what you can't control, like, well, almost everything else. By focusing all your energy on what's in your power and learning to accept the rest with calm, you can find a kind of unshakable inner peace. It's actually no surprise that Stoicism is having this huge comeback today, and everything from therapy to business coaching. So if there is one single thing to take away from all of this, it has to be this. The real legacy of the ancient Greeks isn't some dusty old book of answers. It's a powerful, timeless method for questioning, for examining our world and, more importantly, ourselves, with clarity, with reason, and with a genuine desire for truth. And that method, that toolkit, is now yours to use. So the only question left is, which of these ancient questions about reality, about knowledge, about how to live, are you going to start examining in your own life? Because, as Socrates told us, the unexamined life is not worth living.